The system's broken and Congress hasn't done a thing to fix it. That's what President Obama says and adds he'll do it on his own. We're talking about immigration reform, of course. The president says he's ready to use his executive power to overhaul the law, potentially granting legal status to as many as 5 million undocumented residents. And it could all happen in just days.
And I indicated to Speaker Boehner several months ago that if, in fact, Congress failed to act, I would use all the lawful authority that I possess to try to make the system work better. And that's going to happen.
The president's move has Republicans fuming. House Speaker John Boehner says they'll fight Obama tooth and nail, even if it takes another government shutdown.
This is the wrong way to govern. This is exactly what the American people said on Election Day they didn't want. And so all the options are on the table.
Joining me now to discuss this, Maria Cardona, Democratic strategist and CNN political commentator, along with Lisa Booth, Republican strategist and senior director of BlackRock Group. Lisa, why are Republicans so resistant to this? Are they resistant because of the process, the way the president is doing it, or is it more the substance, or is it both?
Look, it's the process, and I think it's important to note Republicans aren't resistant to immigration reform. John Boehner himself has said that the House will act, that Congress will act on immigration reform. What Republicans are so resistant to is President Obama's decision and his signaling that he will undermine the rule of law, that he will undermine the clear message that voters sent on Election Day that they wanted a Republican majority, that President Obama would be willing to circumvent Congress and undermine the rule of law, undermine that message that was sent, and go it alone on immigration reform. That's absolutely unacceptable. And President Obama himself in 2011 said it would be unconstitutional for him to act alone on immigration. It's time for him to start listening to the American people and even listen to himself.
Maria, some core Republicans are really trying to frame this as amnesty, and so let's just look at what the president's executive action is actually planning to do. It would allow parents of American-born children to remain in the U.S. legally. It would protect undocumented residents who came to the U.S. as children, ensure deportations for convicted criminals. Conservative columnist Charles Krauthammer said this planned action was, quote, impeachable. He calls it a flagrant assault on the Constitution, and he's really not alone on that. So I guess the question for you is, isn't the president going too far here, creating legislation that the Congress ought to be a part of?
No, let's be very clear, Joe. This is not legislation that the president is creating. He cannot create legislation. That is up to Congress. And he has made it very clear that that is what he would prefer to do, is for Congress to do this. So the president is now looking to his executive action, which the Constitution does give him the authority to do. Past presidents have done it. President Reagan has given relief to certain groups of immigrants on immigration. President Clinton did it. George Bush 1 did it. George Bush 2 did it. So when Republicans fume about the president taking this authority into his own hands that he doesn't have, that's just not true. He does have the legal authority to do it. Other presidents have done tons of executive actions, in fact, much more so than President Obama has undertaken. And to go back to Lisa's point, I would believe her, except for we've seen this movie before and we know how it ends. Republicans have had over a year and a half to act on immigration reform. They have refused to do it. So when they say they're not resistant to do it, that they want to get it done, why didn't they do it when they had the chance to do it? And in fact, I'll go further.
Lisa,
they still have the chance to do it. They could do it tomorrow if John Boehner brought it up to the House floor for a vote. So if they don't want the president to take this action, then get the legislation done.
Lisa, okay, let's give Lisa a chance to get in there. Give me a response to that. And also, aren't the Republicans kind of being set up here? Because at the end of the day, this could possibly turn into a problem for Republicans with Hispanic voters in 2016.
Well, to answer Maria's question, she mentions presidents who have taken executive action on immigration. She also mentioned Reagan. Actually, the immigration reform that happened under President Reagan was an act of Congress. That was congressional legislation And none of those presidents that she had mentioned overreached to the extent that President Obama plans to do on immigration. So that's the first answer to your question. Second, in regards to Hispanics in 2016, I actually think President Obama is doing Hispanics a great disservice by acting unilaterally on immigration reform, because he's not addressing the key and the root issues that we're facing with immigration. And he's not allowing Congress to act on immigration if he moves forward alone. And, you know, look, as I mentioned before, President Obama's not addressing the root issues. If anything, he's inciting problems that we've seen, especially problems along the border like we saw over the summer. And according to a Pew Research survey, as, you know, recent as September, Hispanics list enforcement of our nation's laws and border security as top issues that they care about, and that's in line with Republican thinking.
Now,
so why didn't Republicans pass it when they had the chance, Lisa? They had a chance for over a year and a half.
They did in the Senate, and Republicans have acted on immigration, especially if you want to look back. If you want to look, yes, they have. If you want to look at the border crisis this summer, House Republicans, the House was the only body of Congress to pass an emergency funding bill. So they were the ones that acted. They were the ones that showed leadership.
They didn't do anything to fix the immigration system, Lisa. The American people want comprehensive immigration reform. Republicans have turned their back on that time and again.
That's not exactly true that Republicans want, or that Americans want comprehensive immigration.
Let me ask you all a question.
No, it's not. That's categorically untrue. Sorry, Joe.
All right. Quick question. What about the middle ground here? There has been a suggestion that the president take the executive action, then delay implementation of it long enough for the GOP-controlled Congress to push something through. Can we agree that that's a good idea or not?
Well, I think, you know, for someone who's purportedly a constitutional law professor, I think President Obama, it would be in his best interest to brush up on the Constitution. What needs to happen is the president needs to act within the parameters of the Constitution. He needs to do his job, which is to work with Congress to find a solution. It's President Obama's job to enact the laws, and it's Congress's job to devise the laws.
And I'll say this, Joe, the president does want to focus on legislation. It has always been his preferred choice. When Republicans have decided to turn their backs on the American people and do nothing on immigration reform, there's a bill right now that Boehner can call up for a vote tomorrow, Lisa, but they don't want to do it. So the president is taking his constitutional authority that he has, that is given to him by the Constitution, to get something done. And in the meantime, when Republicans get it together, if they can get it together, then he will put the executive action aside and take up the legislation.
All right. Now I just want to get your reaction to something that happened earlier this week when two former presidents had a little fun with each other on social media. It started when Bill Clinton posted a picture of himself on Twitter reading George W. Bush's new book about his father. He thanked him for the book and included the hashtag, "How are you still not on Twitter?" So Bush replies via Instagram, "Hope you like the book about your pal, hashtag, how are you still not on Instagram?" Brother from another mother. So to both, maybe our current leaders in Washington could learn a little something from these guys, don't you think?
Absolutely. They could definitely learn something from these guys. And I think President Obama could learn a thing or two from Bill Clinton. If you remember, Bill Clinton worked with the Republican-led Congress to pass welfare reform.
And I agree. They absolutely should. The leaders in D.C. should learn that you can work together, that you can meet in the middle. Unfortunately, Republicans have demonstrated time and again that when it comes to President Obama, they have no interest in working with him.
President Obama's not come to the table.
He's going to try to get things done.
All right. Hey, thanks so much to you both, Maria Cardona and Lisa Booth. Really good discussion.